Hello, good morning. My name's Annie Kelly. I work for The Guardian. I'm currently the presenter of the Today in Focus News and Current Affairs podcast. But prior to that, I edited human rights reporting series for The Guardian. And today we're really fortunate to be joined by both leading tastemakers and also decision makers in the investigative documentary film industry. We're going to have a discussion today about the state of play in the investigative documentary industry, and we're joined by Nevine Mabro, who is head of BBC Storyville, Joe Potts, who's commissioning editor of Channel 4's Dispatches, Lindsay Poulton, who is the head of Guardian Docs, and Matt Shea, who is an investigative reporter. So first off, we're going to ask a question to Matt. Matt, I wanted to start with you and the clip that we just saw at the beginning of that reel. A very dramatic preview of an upcoming Dispatches documentary you've made. Talk to us about what we just saw.
So basically, this film is about a huge issue that we've uncovered at the heart of our justice system, which is an issue that I think lots of people have seen kind of glimmers of, but we really uncover what's actually going on. And rather than make a film that questions, just has talking heads and statistics, we thought we would actually try and track down the huge number and rising number of criminals that are currently evading justice. So in this film, we try and track them down, and you'll have to watch it to see whether we do.
A lot of the films that you make deal with these very heavy topics, but very high volume topics as well in terms of how interesting they are to people online. Toxic men, disinformation, the criminal underworld. How do you get your docs to cut through all of that noise that's generated around those subjects online?
I think, first off, we're going to do a film about a big topic, whether that's Andrew Tate or whatever. We'll try and make it the definitive film on that subject. But also, I come from a Vice background where we really value kind of immersive presenter-led stories where you're following someone going on a journey into a story and uncovering things as they go. And, Joe Potts and Channel 4 have been great at kind of commissioning those types of films for Dispatches where we bring the kind of headline current affairs stuff. We do original journalism, but the film itself is also a great watch, and it kind of takes you on that immersive journey into the story.
And Joe, you obviously work with Matt. Dispatches has got a long history of doing very provocative, long-form documentary work, investigative work. A lot of that is also very time-consuming and very expensive. So can you tell us, how do you kind of justify that investment? What's your bar of making those kind of editorial decisions about what films get made?
I think we need to be really confident that either it's going to be something that will genuinely kind of set the news agenda, or something that will really pop as a story that will be a subject of debate or cause real change. I think also there are other films that will do, they won't be kind of front page news, but there'll be something that will be really relatable to loads and loads of people. So whether that's, supermarkets or the NHS or other things. So I think we're always looking at what is going to draw a big audience or what is going to have kind of really significant news impact, and we'll invest different amounts in different films. But I think we're extremely lucky at Channel 4 that there's more investment going into investigative journalism at a time when I think it's, struggling sometimes in other places, and it's a really exciting place to be from that point of view. And there's a huge amount of ambition as well there. We've got an investigations team in-house now, which is something that the channel's invested in, and as you can see from Matt's films, there's a lot put into each film so we can try and ensure it does have that impact.
And Nevine, you're head of Storyville now, formerly Channel 4. You've moved to the BBC, which is obviously, the public service remit is its kind of foundational driving force. But how do you now start thinking about what kind of films you're making when there is such intense political scrutiny on the BBC? We've seen that play out in the last year. How are you making those kind of editorial decisions, and are you being influenced at all by that pressure?
Not at all, no. So everything that I've commissioned, whether it's with Channel 4 BBC and now at Storyville, has been about trying to find the films that really resonate with audiences not shying away from any issue. Like, there's no subject off the table. It's about how you treat, the treatment of the film, how you get into a story. Obviously with Storyville, they're feature docs that often mostly do cinema runs, shown at film festivals. It's a different format to hour-long TV films. And I think what's great about that is that you can be really creative and you can get into the big issues of our time through, character or through something that is slightly different to, a TV doc. The clip we just saw there was from 1 in a Million, and I think some of the team are here, which was a 10-year film in the making, premiered at Sundance. It's about a Syrian refugee. And, it tackles really complex issues that people are talking about now, political issues. It's a very moving film. We'll be coming to Storyville later in the year. So, yeah.
I could feel my nose doing that prickly tear thing when I was watching it. And that it turns into that 10-year arc of making that film. Just really quickly, can you talk about some of the challenges of making a film over that kind of time span in terms of keeping your team on board?
I wasn't involved in that one, but I know I have been involved in films that, often the best films are really hard to do for a variety of reasons, whether that is logistical issues, political situations change in the country, wars happen, the duty of care issues. Sometimes, I know I was working on a film, Channel 4, where we paused it for a year because the person wasn't in the right frame of mind to do it, and that's fine, So I think when you're commissioning these films, you've got so many things to think about, but the best films often do take a long time, and it's amazing to be able to follow a character over 10 years.
And Lindsay, the clip that we watched, that film was also a long time in the making, wasn't it? I wonder, just first briefly, if you could just talk to me a little bit about the clip that we saw, especially the use of animation and how you feel that really punched through this very sensitive subject.
Yes, thank you. And of course, we worked closely together on that film when you were in your human rights brief, so you know it well. But Give Me Shelter was the name of that short documentary, which grew from a really important piece of investigative journalism that you commissioned and edited, investigating the trafficking of children on social media platforms. I think it was in 2022 that you commissioned it. It was published in 2023 as a long read, Mailing McNamara and Katie McHugh, two brilliant investigative reporters who really broke new ground with that text-based reporting. And I think that one of our special projects editors, a great filmmaker at The Guardian, Lawrence Topham, really resonated with one particular character, who's Tina Front, who you saw some of her in the film. And we're driven to make character-led narrative approaches to documentary in the short films that we commission for our platforms. And she was this brilliant kind of way into this quite troubling story, but she brought a lot of hope, which I think also inspired us to do that. But there was lots of, like you say, difficulties with that film, not least safeguarding and duty of care to young people who were, particularly vulnerable with their lived experience of trafficking on social media platforms. And that constraint gave us this great creative impulse, which was this animation, this way to disguise their identities, protect them, while still retaining their testimony and their kind of authentic voice. So sometimes those constraints, like you say, can be kind of like the creative driver of a film.
And, a lot of people come to this film now on YouTube, whereas before it was mainly accessed through The Guardian's homepage. How has that influenced the way that you commission, the fact that you need to go out and reach those audiences now, predominantly off platform?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that YouTube it's the world's biggest streamer. Lots of people go there searching for video. It's an important place to reach people. It's a place that we can put our films in front of a paywall. So, and it's 10 years that we've been doing Guardian documentaries for our global platforms, and we've reached 78 million people on YouTube. Last I checked, it was a few months ago, so it'll be more now, because they're always gathering space there. Like you say, the Guardian global platform is really important for us, again, ahead of a paywall. But, thinking about this film as well, it also played to audiences with rooms of people in community watching and speaking about that film, it was used as a tool for education. It's just been nominated for an Emmy. So I think YouTube's an important place for us to reach audiences. It's not the only place. I think there's lots of ways that films can travel and move people and reach people and sort of move the dial.
And now these are questions for everyone. Let's continue with that idea of looking at these new platforms, especially the streamers that we've come to see kind of dominate so much of our industry. In terms of the films and the kind of the way that people are reaching them. Netflix, Amazon, they all make documentaries now. They don't have the same public service remit that you guys do, that the BBC and Channel 4, and obviously it's a key kind of editorial value of The Guardian, the public service journalism. How do you think that is shaping the kind of documentaries that we're seeing on these streaming platforms? And how are you seeing yourselves as counterbalances to that?
I think it is a huge issue because, I mean, one thing we all know and probably everyone in this room knows is that us having editorial independence as the people making the documentary is paramount. We don't give any editorial control to the contributors. On streaming platforms, it's different. It's unclear what if any, their documentary ethics are. Hopefully there's no streaming platform commissioners in this room right now. But why would someone, whether that's Melania Trump or Logan Paul or all these people who've done big streaming platform documentaries, ever do a film with us, which is going to be a balanced film, when they can be an executive producer on their own film on a streaming platform and earn shitloads of money doing it as well? So that it erodes the idea of what a documentary actually is, both in the eyes of the public and also for platforms. So I think it is dangerous, and a lot of people are increasingly saying that the big access documentary is dying because no one wants to do them anymore with people who you can trust to make a balanced documentary.
I think it also offers an opportunity though, because I think when you're doing public service, TV current affairs, which is what I'm focused on, we can tackle really difficult subjects. We can be incredibly bold in what we're doing in terms of the journalism. I think that does mean that the films stand out. We can investigate people who are alive, organisations or other issues that are really, really present tense for people. And I think if you can format them properly, Matt's films are examples of that, in a way that is super, super engaging, we can make brilliant TV, but about something that we can be really bold about because we're confident in the journalism, the fact checking and the compliance is amazing. All of those things that mean that we can take risks actually, which is, I think, a really exciting place to be actually.
Do you think it's kind of changed the way that people understand what a documentary is, though? If you're just watching kind of documentaries on Netflix, do you think it has changed how people see what their purpose is? I don't know. What do you think, Nevine?
I think you can get a variety of different films. You go to different platforms for different types of films. I think people understand the strands have an identity. So you go to Dispatches for a certain type of film, Storyville. I know in terms of the Storyville audience, it's the only dedicated feature doc strand, I think, in the UK. It's very precious. People love it. And so you've got an audience that knows, what that means and what kind of film they're going to get or quality of film. And I think that's the same with streamers. I think Netflix has gone into some quite interesting territory with like the Manosphere in terms of some of the dramas they've done as well. They've kind of done some quite punchy stuff. So I think it's kind of interesting, but I do think that exec producers on, celeb films is something that does change the way that we, maybe it's harder for public service broadcasters to do those kind of films, but maybe that's fine. Maybe we do different types of things and we do riskier films that are very true to the public service remit.
And Lindsay, has that changed at all in terms of the short docs, the influence of the streamers?
I mean, I think, of course, it influences the ecosystem that we're all operating in. I mean, similar to Storyville, we face largely the independent documentary landscape. So I think we're all swimming in the same waters, and this does kind of impact people's work and how they think about their work and how the work is developed. I think it's so important, though, to be fully grounded in your own identity. I think for us at The Guardian, this thing of editorial rigor editorial independence and creative excellence is sort of, it's the ground that we stand on, and we just wouldn't compromise over that. And I do think if you can speak to your audiences about, why independence matters, and I think there is awareness raised about that. I do think audiences understand that.
Journalism is at the heart of everything that we've all done in our career, and I think that's really important because, it is about the truth, it is about establishing facts, and if you can stand by your film and say, like, this is balanced, this is accurate, this is fair, then you can cut out all the noise and incoming that will inevitably be headed when it's aired. And you've got to be able to, we used to talk about it a lot, Channel 4, defend your film, and that's really important.
Do you think there's a risk at all that that when you commission, like, the algorithm or the way people are reaching your films almost becomes an invisible editor in terms of how it is you're doing things, or what it is you're doing them on?
I think it's really important that it doesn't. Like, I think that there is a risk, I think, with algorithms that you could cede your editorial independence if you make decisions based on what you think or the algorithm may or may not do. So I think it's really important that we continue to stand in our, the decisions that we make based on, the fact-based storytelling, the editorial rigor. Sorry to keep banging on about editorial rigor, but I do think that is, it's important that we stay rooted in that.
I think one of the issues, though, is, of course, that editorial rigor does not play well on the algorithm. The things that play well on the algorithm are, in fact, the opposite of editorial rigor, the most polarizing, the most argumentative. And one issue that we are facing is our documentaries do have a second life on social media. And oftentimes, most of our stuff it's seen more in clips that are re-edited and distorted on social media than people watching the actual original film. To give the Andrew Tate film that we made as an example, when that film came out, most people saw it through clips that Andrew Tate and his army of clippers had recut to make it look like we were lying. If you had went on Twitter around the time that film came out, you would believe that all of the women that we interviewed as part of our film who alleged that Andrew Tate abused and raped them were paid actresses. And that we had used AI to fake his voice and all this other stuff. That was the dominant narrative on social media. So you do get this question of, like, what is the point of making these films if more people are going to see the distorted untruth than the film itself? And of course, there is still a point. It's because this is the only game in town. It's the only weapon we have to fight against this increasing tide of kind of algorithmic distortion.
What could be some of the ways that we counter that, then? I don't know if anyone else has got a view on that.
I mean, I think we think a lot when we're making films about, obviously we want them to be really engaging, but also kind of showing our workings a bit and kind of walking the audience through the investigation. So when you watch the film, you understand why it is the truth or how we've got to the point we've got to. So you're kind of defending the process through making the film. And I think an audience is interested in that as well, actually. That process isn't boring. And I think it's really important that we work out how to weave that into our films as much as we can. No one film is, not all of our films will be the same format, but I think that does matter. And I think it also is really important as well that the films feel authentic, so that, if Matt or anyone else is presenting or reporting on a film, or you have an undercover reporter or something like that, I think you want to understand what their point of view is, as long as it's based on the evidence. And I think when you have that authentic reaction within a film, I think that plays with the audience as well, and it helps to counter the idea that what we're doing isn't the truth. So it's not kind of cold and boring. You're immersed in it and you understand it. We could also just start hiring influencers instead of reporters as well.
They could do it. Yeah. The other thing I think linked to that is what does success look like for a film? And when we commission, you think, is this film gonna be a ratings winner? Is it gonna reveal something new, make news? Is it gonna win an award? There's various measures of success, and I think and audiences is obviously one of those. And the long gone are the days where you put something on telly and 10 million people would watch it, but you get to people in different spaces, and it's about finding the ways to reach people.
And all of you are trying to make these films, cutting through this noise in this kind of increasingly busy space. In your day-to-day lives, what are your, I guess this is a question for Lindsay, Nevine and Joe, what are the kind of biggest pressures on you right now? Is it budgets? Is it financial constraints? Is it distribution? And how is it that you can build sustainable careers as filmmakers in this space as well, with all of these pressures?
I think I suppose I feel I know it's a very challenging environment at the moment, but certainly from a dispatches point of view, more is being invested in the films, but we are focusing on hours mainly so that when we do them, we can put enough time and money into making them really exceptional films, so they will cut through. So the bar is high for us in terms of impact or the journalism, but once we're in it, a lot is invested in it. So I think the pressure really isn't, it's not about the budgets, because I think that's something that the channel are really, really supporting us on. It's about how the films are going to be relevant. And I think in a really kind of rapidly changing news cycle, I mean, it's often insane how much happens in a single day, and everyone's aware of that. So I think for us, it's thinking, well, if we're putting a film out in 3, 6 or 12 months' time, why will it cut through then? Why will it still feel relevant then? What have we got that will mean that it will cut through at that point? So I think that's the challenge for me in commissioning, and the challenge for people that are pitching to us as well, to think about those things.
I was just going to say about with independent filmmakers, many of whom are here, it's a very difficult time now, and I think everyone recognises that. And I think understanding, as commissioners, understanding how the market changes in the American documentary space, and new funders coming up. And I think one of the way Storyville works is funding is pieced together with various people, and so what I can do is try and help people understand how that works and bring people together so that films actually get made.
Very similar, but in the short space, acknowledging that it is really difficult to have to sort of have a jigsaw of funding at each stage of your development, production or completing. And so I guess how we deal with that is acknowledging that with shorts it's a bit more fleet of foot, maybe the bar to entry is slightly lower, the risk that you take because the budgets are slightly lower is slightly reduced. But also it's that thing about collaboration and trying to be as flexible. I think what we try to do is be as flexible as possible and do as much as we can in terms of bringing together, and often internationally across borders, looking to Europe, looking to other potential partners, so that we're not working in isolation and we are kind of tackling these things, trying to be greater than the sum of our parts.
And can you talk a little bit about your process of making films in terms of making it work? Yeah, in terms of kind of making, as a filmmaker yourself, working with these platforms and with these editors. Like, how is it that any kind of fast tips that you could give people on how to get their films commissioned?
On how to get their films commissioned. So I think basically you should always be looking for stories. So, I mean, I started out in development. I was lucky enough to be around when Vice kind of still existed. I know it exists in some kind of small capacity now, but that was, I do feel for people entering the job market now, because something like that doesn't exist, a place where they would hire people who didn't really know what they were doing. You learn how to do it over many years, and then eventually you get to the place where you can make films. But I think one thing we always did was you have to read everything. You have to read all the magazines. You have to always be reading them against the grain for the real story. You have to be listening to everything. You have to be completely engaged. And eventually you will get a story that is so good. And when you have the bit of access that no one else has, if you're first on it and you have that access, then you become very commissionable. So that's the advice I would give.
Okay. And finally, we are in the closing minute of this panel. We're told that we have to keep to time. So I just wanted to end by just saying, there's a lot of talk about long-form documentaries, the pressure it's under. We live in this increasingly fragmented, kind of frightening world, alarming world. Why is it the documentaries still matter?
Because they can genuinely change things, and I think genuinely take risks. And, I think there are so many moments. I think if you think about the news or stories that cut through that have come from documentaries that have broken those stories or got into places that nobody has before. So, yeah.
Reveal things that, you don't know about the world or governments, and, investigate things that are really important that we all need to know about.
lies and disinformation eventually erode over time, but like things that are true stay standing, and there's a demand for it.
Yeah, I still am optimistic that they can move people and bring people together when we really need it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.